Let's take a few minutes to sit before we start. My original intention tonight was to talk about renunciation, but I feel really interested in what emerged as a theme during this retreat, which is um, how do we sit undefended? How do we sit not in conflict with whatever arises in the body mind? And Shelley read part of the Anatanda Sutta last night, which I think is so powerful, and it came up again in our group question and answer, and it's powerful for me. So I just want to continue and explore this question. The first line in the sutta: fear is born from arming oneself, and how counterintuitive. um, mhm. I'm really I'm moved by these instructions around dropping in, relaxing, softening, widening, dropping what's not needed. And in a way, kind of that arming is an action of self-view. It's a response to self-view. So in the deepest way, this practice of being undefended is a practice of disrupting the delusion of self-view. So there's an assumption that in some way that we don't completely articulate, that we are solid, we are separate, we are permanent. And this is such a subtle teaching from the Buddha, that this is a construction that we perpetuate with our thoughts again and again and again. And he described it as the very difficult to see. And it is the last fetter, it is the last affliction to be shed. All our craving and hatred is gone before the fetter of conceit. So for me, that's an invitation to get used to it. It's here. It's here. And what is our relationship to self view? And just to say, I don't think it's useful to sort of feel self view as yes or no, but like a spectrum. Like we can experience in our bodies and minds when there's more spaciousness, when there's more agility, less clinging, less contraction. And then we know the moments when we are really dense and solidified in a point of view. There's an armoring. And we can just feel that. We can feel the growing porousness. We can feel the growing density. And that can be part of our practice. So in the Tibetan tradition, so colorful, uh, there's the wheel of samsara, right? This wheel of a continuing, endless cycle of being born and dying, being born and dying. And it's fueled through our unawareness. It's fueled through aggressiveness. It's fueled through craving. And in this hub of this wheel, there are three animals that represent craving, hatred, and delusion, and they chase each other's tails. So they're intermingled, these three toxic roots, as they're called, they're intermingled, and they set the wheel in motion and continue it in motion. But in some depictions, the pig, which represents ignorance, gives birth to the bird and the snake, which represent craving and hatred. So it's the delusion that gives birth to craving. And and the wheel is out of true. So that's the other piece of it. It's like it's described as a wheel that's not properly on its axis. It's not in alignment with how things actually are. It's a wheel out of true. And so this path, in effect, we're moving from a wheel out of true to a wheel in alignment in our own minds and bodies. So I'm really moved in this anatta anatan ataganda sutta, um, how the Buddha just states his own fear and the fear in response to the hostility that he sees in the world. And I think Shelley pointed to this paragraph too, seeing creatures flopping around like fish in water too shallow. And that speaks to a kind of desperation and a kind of lack, like a need, right? Fish in shallow water. And we can feel that. We know that experience of lack and floundering and craving. So he described discerning this thorn. It's this thorn that makes one run in all directions. But if the thorn's taken out, one settles down. So, what is the thorn? What is the thorn? I'll read the rest of this sutta. This is still only an excerpt, but we didn't read these paragraphs yet. So, just to reiterate one earlier, it says, it's only when we're pierced by this thorn that one runs in all directions, so that if that thorn is taken out, one does not run and settles down. Who here has crossed over desires, the world's bond, so hard to get past? He does not grieve, she does not mourn. His stream is cut, she's all unbound. What went before, this is the past, let go of it. All that's to come, the future, have none of it. Don't hold to what's in between, what's now. Don't even hold to what's now. And you'll wander fully at peace. For whom there is no I making all throughout the body and mind, and who grieves not for what is not, is undefeated in the world. For whom there is no this is mine, nor anything like that is theirs, not even finding selfness, he does not grieve at I have nothing. So for me, this kind of invitation to arrive undefended, it really feels like an emptying out. It feels like a ground zero, against which, we can just see that little house of cards, that creation of self in a tumble of thoughts that come out of that silence. We can feel that volitional activity of self-making, but we have to allow it. We have to drop down, we have to empty so that can be seen. I appreciated our discussion of abiding today, and that's the Buddha's words in the Four Foundations. I will abide contemplating the body. I will abide contemplating feeling, contemplating mental formations, contemplating dhammas. And I just looked it up because of our interesting conversations. To abide, to accept, to be in accordance with. So, with whatever arises in the experience, to be in accordance with. And so that can mean, our deepest vulnerability, our deepest rage, our deepest betrayal. And I think we're afraid. We're afraid of those forces in the mind and heart. But I think that's not right view. We want to do battle. We want to conquer. We want to reject. But how can we abide and come to know and give room for in the present? Ajahn Suchito makes the important point, then when we allow what's arising, that's already kindness, that's already metta. This theme made me think about, when I was in my early 20s, I moved to New York to put myself just in the whole dance world. I wanted to dance, I wanted to be a dancer at any cost. And I kind of I saw what Shelley was talking about in terms of like this a resonant beauty. There was just for me a resonant beauty watching people move their bodies in that way and express themselves in that way. It was so powerful. But I wasn't that well trained. I was really shy. And so I came up against so much self-consciousness, both in the studio and so much vulnerability and uh, yeah, just a lot of fear and kind of, yeah, being interested in it and really doing everything I could to think my way out of that fear. Really strategic, like how can I manage? I need to manage this fear. And there was a real like CEO, somebody said that the other day, like CEO, you know, in charge and with a lot of hardness and a lot of rejection because it was so imprisoning. It was so in the way. Um, and and it maybe it worked a little, but it didn't work. It just didn't. This just didn't work. And I was performing one evening, and there was just a lot of conditions where the vulnerability was particularly strong, and I got overwhelmed. I just got overwhelmed with the energy of fear, and it really made a disaster of the dance I was performing, and it was really a fiasco. And but it but it shocked me. It really shocked me the power of this energy, the power of this force. It kind of woke me up in a way, like this is bigger than me. I didn't create this. Is just here. And suddenly there was interest, like, what is this? Really, like, what is going on? What is going on? And so the direction moved from managing, rejecting, to opening and like, whoa, what is this? And and that brought me to meditation, actually. You know, being in silence and just this beauty of the breath, and then just letting this fear, giving this fear all the space it needed to do its dance, watching it energetically, watching its form, watching the imagery around with it, but locating it right here. It's right here, this fear in the heart. So I guess we could call that like a movement of being undefended, a movement of allowing, a movement of turning toward. So this really speaks to me, this idea of like not battling with our afflictions, not battling with the hindrances, but they need to be seen through. They need to be seen through. The question came up yesterday about the relationship between fear and being undefended. And, um, then I was talking about that there's a place for certain kinds of fear that, are about survival and protection. But a lot of the fear is around self view, is around self making, consciously or unconsciously. There's this term asawa. Um, the Pali translation is it like outflows or cankers, corruptions, taints. Um, and these are the ways our heart leaks. And asawas, they are expressed in different categories of craving. Um, so three general categories. So the craving to become, the craving not to become, and the craving for sense objects. I'll just start with an illustration of kind of an asava. I was on my first retreat at IMS in Massachusetts. Um, I was doing walking meditation, and it was just a beautiful sort of place just outside the meditation hall where there's stained glass windows and a beautiful wooden, just smooth wooden floor. And the sunlight comes in just such a way, and walking between these stained glass windows. And there was, I just noticed just such contentment, so happy just to feel my feet against the floor, so present, kind of so grounded and at ease and solid. And then in a moment, the thought came up was that I was going to have an interview shortly with Michelle McDonald Smith, the teacher. You know, you meet with a teacher and you're expected to talk about your practice. And just in the moment that that thought arose, there was such a, you know, what am I going to say? And just the swirl of craving, of fear that just sort of arose in like this, just this image of me sitting across from Michelle McDonald Smith and talking about my practice, and would I be okay, and would she approve of me, or you just be the good student, what, the ancient karma that just in one thought was like right there. And what was interesting was it felt like a leak. It felt like a tentacle just went out in this whole construction and this whole fear that formed in a moment from this feeling of being really gathered, really present. And then the mind just scattered. Uh, and so that was powerful. So when I heard that word asawa, the outflows, the ways the heart weaken, I was really moved by that because it feels visceral. Oh yeah, that's actually how it is. We have that visceral sense of scatteredness or fracturedness with craving. So that was an example in that moment of what the Buddha called the craving to become, the craving for existence. So to become in this very basic way, it's like this restless activity of mind that is always trying to feel solid, trying to feel certain. It's our craving for power, it's our craving for beauty, it's our craving for being seen, for being respected, just the whole range of craving in the misconception that it will take care of us, that it will finally satisfy us if I get this thing. If Michelle McDonald Smith likes me, I'll be okay. I can get on with it. But the sense of self is inherently unstable. And that's something we just need to see again and again to begin to look in the right direction, to begin to want in the right direction. So, craving for non existence is another category the Buddha talked about. And this is craving to be separated from painful feeling. This is that feeling when we just want to remove ourselves. We've had enough. Where can I go to disappear? Right? And what do we do with that? We have a whole industry of Netflix, of, you know, like I started to observe, why is it such a relief watching these murder drama? It's like, why is it such a relief? It's like, because I'm out of it's somebody else's drama, I can just disappear into somebody else's drama. And um, or just the whole range of drugs, of alcohol, just to soften the edge, soften the intensity. This is just too much. There's like no escape. Give me a glass of wine. And then there's craving for sense objects. This is just our entanglement with sense pleasure. um, this is delighting in what we hear, taste, see, touch. um, And the problem isn't with the beautiful sight or the beautiful taste, it's the entanglement. It's the clinging that can be born of it. Like, I was just talking with a friend about our coffee addiction, right? And it's like the first cup of coffee, it's just great. It's great. But then it's hard to stop. And I see, oh, I'm just drinking more coffee. It's not even pleasurable anymore. And I'm just drinking more coffee because there's an idea that it will comfort me, or there's like, you know, this delusion around it. And so I would call that an entanglement. This is an entanglement with sense pleasure. There's no inherent entanglement in coffee. It's in that heart's relationship, in the need that's directed toward that object. I've shared this before. This is from one of Ajahn Sumedho's talks, many years ago. Um, it's just great. So he was a student of Ajahn Chah, and this is from when he was studying with Ajahn Chah in Thailand, learning to speak Thai, and he's this is a story he tells. So Longpo Cha, it's Ajahn Chah, would always encourage me to keep aware of the pride, the conceit, the embarrassment, and the self consciousness that I would feel. Unfortunately, in Thailand, the people are such that they're just grateful for a monk giving a talk. Even if it's not a very good talk, it doesn't seem to upset them very much. They seem quite grateful about it. So that made it quite easy. One time at a Katina ceremony, this is a celebration at the end of the long rains retreat, where we had to sit up all night, Ajahn Chah said, Sumedho, you have to give a talk for 3 hours tonight. And up until that time, I'd only talked for half an hour, and that was a strain. 3 hours. And he knew. With Ajahn Chah, I always felt that if he said something, I'd do it. So I sat up on the high seat and I talked for 3 hours. And I had to sit there and watch people get up and leave. And I had to sit there and watch people just lie down on the floor and sleep in front of me. And at the end of the 3 hours, there were still a few polite old ladies sitting up there. That wasn't Ajahn Chah saying, okay, Sumedho, go in there and bowl them over with some scintillating stuff, entertain them, really suck it to them. I began to realize that what he wanted me to do was to be able to look at this self-consciousness, the posing, the pride, the conceit, the grumbling, the lazy, the not wanting to be bothered, the wanting to please, the wanting to entertain, the wanting to get approval. All these have come up during these talks of the past 15 years. But the meditation is one in which more and more one feels a real understanding of the suffering of a self view. And then through that insight, one realizes the abiding in emptiness. So, yeah, can we open, relax, be in accord, abide with the pride, Abide with the conceit. Abide with the self-consciousness. Like, welcome, welcome. And there's something for me so spacious in that invitation, like so opening. I've been feeling a lot of silence this retreat and just like, oh, you know, what's going to arise in the silence? Just really curious, just that opening and letting it be whatever, just whatever. It's okay. What's beyond our words? Sylvia Boorstein, she says, wisdom statements don't work in the middle of heartbreak. Heartbreak requires silence. This is from an interview with Jack Cornfield from Tricycle. He says, true Dharma practice is a revolutionary activity, and you can't do it in a comfortable way. You really have to challenge the whole identity of your life. The strength that's needed is the courage of heart to remain undefended and open, a willingness to touch the 10,000 sorrows from our compassion, the deepest place of our being. This is a different kind of fearlessness, which requires as much or more passion and fire. I really appreciate that he brings up passion and fire. I love that Shelley talked about wholeheartedness last night and sort of the beauty that we feel in that quality of wholeheartedness. And there's something that feels really important for me and like I know this word passion is not popular in Buddhism. It's problematic, but there's just something around the aliveness and the resolve of the heart. And it has to do with love. The love has to be there. And so, yeah, just asking the question, what is the appropriate place of desire? When is desire appropriate in this path? The second noble truth, craving is at the root of suffering. So this is from Thanissaro Bhikkhu. All phenomena, the Buddha said, are rooted in desire. Everything we think, say, or do, every experience comes from desire. Even we come from desire. We were born into this life because of our desire to be. Consciously or not, our desires keep redefining our sense of who we are. Desire is how we take our place in the causal matrix of space and time. The only thing not rooted in desire is nirvana, for it's the end of all phenomenon and lies even beyond the Buddha's use of the word all. But the path that takes you to nirvana is rooted in desire. The notion of a skillful desire may sound strange, but a mature mind intuitively pursues the desire it sees as skillful and drops those it perceives as not. So again, just like self, no self, I think we can have a spectrum in terms of desire, like from one end, the painful world of addiction and craving. Like we understand that. We don't want to cultivate craving. But on the other hand, on the other end, we could say, is the desire for aspiration. And then a whole range that fall in between. Chanda is the Pali word for aspiration, and it's our deep wellspring of motivation, what we care about, what we love, and some important points about it. It's endowed with active volitional striving. So, this is our capacity to hold a vision based on a recognition of its value. So, when that strong desire is alive for us, it will motivate us, it will really shape how we pay attention, it will shape how we relate to a moment, it will shape our choices, it will shape our actions. So, I think it's really important that we are articulate in our own minds about what we care about what we aspire to, that that is really in the forefront, and to let it move us through the world. And aspiration is a essential force in the mind, but it can become craving if we're attached to outcomes. That's a really important point, to see that corruption that can happen. So, our cultivation of wisdom is learning to place the full heart in service of what we care about and then let go. Like, what a paradox. But wisdom gives us that power. And there's the other paradox of like training to hold each moment as an end in itself, full, complete, worthy of our full attention, but also getting that each moment leads to another moment. Like there are karmic implications in every moment. So there's sort of a paradox of aspiration and location of valuing the immediate moment. And I think there's a path that we all find ourselves on where, our desires, the pleasures that we seek, the desires, the aspirations that as we mature, they become more nuanced, they become um, more powerful, maybe, and we become disenchanted with desires that maybe served us earlier. So I was just um, telling a story in the last Dharma talk. A memory came up because I was thinking about like when I was a kid, the things I was really attached to, like what really held my heart, what really kind of had all that craving around. But for me, it was a ceramic pig. One of the things, it was a ceramic pig that sat on my dresser, and I just loved that pig for whatever reason. I just loved that pig, and yeah, and I was so attached that I'm gonna take that pig to bed with me, hold it against my chest. And I knew better. It was ceramic. It was like not a good idea, but it was like I was attached, and sure enough, it was in a million pieces, and that's why I have the memory, because it was a shock. It was a little crisis in my little self. But what's interesting to me is the just that movement of want, right? The movement of wanting and what it attached itself to. And that was an object with obvious limitations, right? But that's kind of that's the mechanism. So I say, okay, this object is limited. So what object what object am I going to attach to now? So wanting finds another object. And now it's like, and there's a description, serene disenchantment, when we kind of let go. There's a natural organic falling away of things that once held a lot of power, and then as we mature, they just don't. Sometimes that it's a rupture, but sometimes it's this just serene disenchantment. In in the language of like yoga, they have this term neti neti, like not this, not that. Like we discover slowly that won't, no, not this, not that. And our path is like, you know, seeking a better refuge, seeking, aspiring to something more that will take care of us more. And this as we become more discerning and sometimes, we have to let go of this thing before we even to make space for what the next thing might be that will move us. I noticed even now how subtle it can be, and I noticed it a lot with my interactions with my partner in conversations or just doing stuff around the house. It's like I'll just notice in anything I'm about to say, I'll notice if there's a little clinging in it, like if there's some like wanting something back from him or there's a little irritation or just whatever it is. And it's like it's so interesting because it's like, behind every thought, every time we speak, there's a flavor, there's a motivation. And it's like I just notice this now. I notice it all the time. And it's like there's a pause of like, oh, do I need to say that? And sometimes I do, but most often it's like when I detect that feeling, it's like, I didn't really need to say that. There's a better way here. I don't need to say that. And it's so I'm so appreciative. I'm so appreciative to keep seeing this little this little claw of like, I'll call it self-view, like this little, you know, flavor that I don't trust. And I don't want to come from that place. I can just let go. What else is possible? Where else can I come from? Ajahn Suchito stresses how important it is to notice our beautiful states of mind. That and there's pleasure in that, and that's a trustworthy pleasure to notice our compassion, to notice moments of generosity, moments of letting go, moments of courage, just showing up when it's difficult. And I just lifted this from a talk. He said, breathe it into the body, imprint it, take it in, saturate. He sometimes uses the word linger. So receiving these beautiful qualities of mind, and then notice if and when we complicate them with the volitional activity of self view, my compassion, you know, as opposed to compassion of just moving, my generosity. Just that little gentle corruption, that we don't judge, we just notice that, just that little volitional activity. When I was in Burma practicing for about 2.5 months in this rural monastery in Mobi, and I really I learned something about pleasure and simplicity when I was there, and the bed that I slept on, I presume everyone, it was just like a board with some, woven, like, mats, like, really just flat mats. So there was no mattress, no pillow, and I just put my sweaters down just to soften it a little bit. But it was like, the mind at times was just so happy. Like, I just what I was struck by how well I slept. Like, I really slept well, and even though it was kind of not, comfortable really, but, like, the dreams were so vivid. Like, there was just what was going on in the mind was so alive and so much dominated, like, the little ache in the hip from sleeping on a hard board. So, it just taught me, like, "Oh, we can be happy with not much." I had 2 outfits to wear, they were the same, a brown skirt and a white blouse, and it was so great to not have to, like, look at a wardrobe and, just figure that out, have that complication there, because it led to being able to see much subtler things because the mind is wasn't caught up in so much complexity and so much activity. So I could see the settling, that was really important. And since that time, and it's been a lot of years now, but I've really made an effort. I think Mark and I both have, like, to not have anything in the house that we're not mindful of. Like, no dusty tubs in the basement, like 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 we owe that to objects. We owe that, and that's, again, it goes back to this resonant beauty when we care for everything that surrounds us, when we don't have more than we can be mindful of. I still have more than I can be mindful of, but I'm still, it's like I really believe in that, and just, so that everything is surrounded with care, really emphasizing simplicity. So I think sitting practice is one way we build our strength in learning to observe the wanting mind, getting to know the wanting mind. Yeah, it's like the words that come to mind, like the urge of wanting, the restlessness, the nausea, the emptiness, like the visceral. What is that? What is this force of wanting? Really getting familiar with that terrain of wanting. And Pedro Pema Chodron, she says this nice thing, when we encounter this urge, that in our practice, in our formal practice, we interrupt momentum that usually follows. We do this by not following our thoughts. We train in sitting still with our desires. This is how we learn to stop the chain reaction of habitual patterns that usually rule our lives. If we practice in this way, our wisdom slowly becomes a stronger force than our afflictions. And I'll just read this one paragraph. This is a sutta I came across. Just, you know, to me, it's like the Buddha being still with fear. And this is when he was a bodhisattva in training. But it was like, he's noticing fear and dread are coming upon him. And he says, what if I don't move? If I'm sitting, I'll be with the fear. I won't walk. I won't lie down. Or if I'm lying down and the fear and dread come upon me, I won't sit, I won't walk. Or if I'm walking and the fear and dread come upon me, I'll continue walking. I won't sit, I won't lie down. So that's basically the sutta in my words, but it's like being steady, not running, being steady with these energies as they as they arise. And we're steady with our mindfulness until we penetrate or see beyond the unwholesome state. So, what's on the other side of fear? It's really important to know that we're letting go into something much freer. Just offer my last thoughts around releasing this conceptual framework of getting the self more comfortable. Do you know what I mean? Like it's still based on self. It's still based on like, how do I manage? How does this self manage? And what's being asked is more radical. It's a radical turning. And and as we've been talking about, like when we have these strong forces like craving, it's like they don't belong to us. This is nature. Right? This is nature. It moves through the body, it moves through the mind. It's bigger than a personal construction. So with our mindfulness, yeah, we can just know each moment and that moment is good enough to be known. And we stay steady with our stress, with compassion. We take interest until it disappears on its own accord. Okay, I'm going to read this poem. Mm, It makes me cry for no reason, but I'll do my best to get through. This is called. This is written by Roger Keyes. He's was an American poet and professor of East Asian studies. He died just a few years ago. Um, and it's called, what is it called? Well, I don't know what it's called. I missed the title. But he's writing it about Hokusai, who was a Japanese painter. And he has this iconic print that maybe you've seen. It's like this great wave that's cascading over these like very fragile kind of canoes that are in the sweep, and there's a sort of sporullic feeling to this cascading, and in the back is a image of Mount Fuji, just sort of this solid, stable Mount Fuji. Um, and so this is Roger Key's kind of homage to Hokusai, the painter. He says, Hokusai says, look carefully. He says, pay attention, notice. He says, keep looking, stay curious. He says, there is no end to seeing. He says, look forward to getting old. He says, keep changing. You just get more who you really are. He says, get stuck, accept it, repeat yourself as long as it's interesting. He says, keep doing what you love. He says, keep praying. He says, every one of us is a child. Every one of us is ancient. Every one of us has a body. He says, every one of us is frightened. He says, every one of us has to find a way to live with fear. He says, everything is alive: shells, buildings, people, fish, mountain, trees, wood is alive, water is alive. Everything has its own life. Everything lives inside us. He says, live with the world inside you. He says, it doesn't matter if you draw or write books. It doesn't matter if you saw wood or catch fish. It doesn't matter if you sit at home and stare at the ants on your veranda or the shadows of the trees and grasses in your garden. It matters that you care. It matters that you feel. It matters that you notice. It matters that life lives through you. Contentment is life living through you. Joy is life living through you. Satisfaction and strength is life living through you. He says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Love, feel. Let life take you by the hand. Let life live through you. Sit for just a moment. Thank you for your attention tonight. So we have half an hour of walking, and we'll see you at 8:30.